Chapter 16. The rain wasn't falling hard, yet in the few minutes it had taken to walk here from Shinjuku Station, the water had soaked through the soles of her shoes. This endless drizzle had been going on for some days now, making it difficult to believe summer was really here. The atmospheric pressure today made her breath grow shallow, and she felt herself floating along amid the soft water. Rika shared the lift with a young Middle Eastern woman who got out at the same floor, and the two of them stood together at the reception. The woman leaned over to take the ballpoint pen first, her clothing rustling as she did so. By now, Rika could identify that the smell drifting over to where she stood and tickling the base of her nose was a mix of spices where cumin played a central role. Madame had a fondness for cumin. Rika had been trying not to think about the cooking lessons and everything that had gone with them, but it came back to her now all at once, and she found her senses swimming. Lately, Rika wasn't in the mood for making elaborate meals, and she didn't have the time for it anyway. As if performing a series of automatic movements that had been written into her body, she cooked rice and froze it in bowl-sized portions, peeled and cut up fruit to put in Ziploc bags, boiled and salted vegetables, soaked dried foods in water, steamed chicken breasts in sake in the microwave before pulling them apart into bits and putting them into Tupperware containers. All these tasks were impossible to mess up as long as you kept your hands moving, so she didn't need to engage her brain as she went about them. In this way, she produced meals that she could eat straight from the container without even having to turn on the hob for those nights when the memories of Kajii would return, making her body grow so heavy she felt incapable of moving an inch, and robbing her of her appetite. Preparing this food was like a quiet ritual that Rika performed, one necessary for her survival. In the stand crammed full of umbrellas, she spotted a blue-gray one with a flower pattern that she recognized and slipped her see-through plastic one in beside it. In the low-ceilinged room, tables and chairs were set out close together. Next to the wall stood a row of steaming pans and rice cookers, heaps of fruit and cheese, vegetables whose names she didn't know, platters of lamb, and small cakes and confectionery items arranged by color. Stretching out in front of them was a line of people holding disposable foil plates. Young women of university age were circulating the tables, pouring out cups of cherry juice. On the wall was a projector with a slide announcing the purpose of the meeting and explaining key terms. Filled with people of all ages, sexes, and nationalities, the space had a homemade feel that reminded Rika of children's parties. When Rika was shown to her seat, her best friend, who she hadn't seen in about a month, looked up at her and pulled a silly face, no particular sign of concern on her face. It had been Reiko who had texted to invite her to an event about fasting, run by an organization aimed at spreading awareness of Turkish culture in Japan. "Try to come on an empty stomach," Reiko had said in her text. Rika had no idea what it was about, but she'd skipped out of work and, for the first time in a good while, made her way into the city for a non-work-related excursion. "It's weird, isn't it, that I'd be this stressed out and still not lose any weight," Rika said, sitting down opposite her. Over the past month, Rika had had many a sleepless night, and her appetite still hadn't fully returned, but she hadn't lost any weight. And yet Rika had realized a while back that, even if she were to lose a few kilos, she still wouldn't pass. However beautiful she became, however well she did at work, even if she got married and had children, society didn't let women off that easily. The standards were getting higher and assessments harsher. The only way to be free of it, however scary and anxiety-inducing it was, however much you kept on looking back to check whether or not people were laughing at you, was to learn to accept yourself. But thanks to all those nutrients I had stored away, I'm somehow still standing. I'm glad. You look better than I was expecting. Reiko herself was looking slightly softer around the edges, and the color had returned to her face. "It's been so long since I've seen you," Rika smiled. She knew that if she could just get through this first meeting with her best friend, she would be past the worst. However she might have exposed herself to the world at her most pathetic, she still couldn't relinquish the desire to be a prince in front of Reiko. Her stomach clenched. "I'm so sorry I couldn't do anything for you when you were having such a bad time," Reiko said, and stopped. In the space between them, the red juice trembled in the paper cups. The fragrance of a complex mix of spices enveloped them, and an elderly man began to pluck a stringed instrument. No, it's me who should be apologizing. I was that intent on supporting you, and then as soon as things started heating up for me, I left you on your own. Reiko had gone on meeting up with Ryosuke outside the house and then, when Shinoi had decided to sell the apartment, had finally returned to her life as it had been before. This Rika had heard from Shinoi very recently. Reiko and Ryosuke had filled in divorce papers, ready for her to file at any time. Now that she knew that she could be free of her marriage when, and if she chose to be, she wanted to spend as much time with him as possible while she still wanted to. That was how she had decided to think about the situation. The iftar is the meal that people in Turkey have to break their fast. The point of this event is to allow Japanese people to experience what fasting during Ramadan is like. Did you manage to fast today? Yes, although I had some yogurt for breakfast. I felt a bit hurt when you told me not to eat, because it was like you were telling me to diet. You know, I've got all these people in the industry and online saying how huge and crazy I am. It's not all criticism, though. Rika had meant her remark as a self-deprecating joke, but Reiko's face wore a serious look, and there was kindness in her eyes. Lots of people are saying what a talented journalist you are. There are loads who are on your side, who say that Kajii is either lying or has betrayed you. Whenever there's opposition, there's also support, don't forget. You see, you shouldn't underestimate the research capabilities of a childless, internet-loving housewife with plenty of time on her hands. Reiko's calm tone of voice, the fact that she wasn't in any kind of panic, was a source of great reassurance to Rika. She knew that Reiko wasn't saying this to console her either. To conceal how close she felt to tears, Rika said, "I've got way more time on my hands too. The only thing that's keeping me busy is running around apologizing to people. They've not decided what department I'm going to be moving to yet, but for the moment I've been taken off any public-facing projects, and I'm just doing admin or research tasks in the office. Thanks for asking me along. It's nice to do something different like this. And to meet, just the two of us." The pair joined the line for the buffet, plates in hand. The cheerful array of fruits and vegetables, all so much larger and more vividly colored than those you could find in a regular supermarket, made Rika feel as if she were visiting a market in a far-flung land. She was drawn by the look of the kebabs and various kinds of bread, but it was the rice that called to her the most powerfully. The lamb pilaf, stuffed vine leaves, and roast peppers filled with pilau particularly caught her attention. The smooth, boiled dumplings with their savory yogurt sauce fired up her appetite. At each bite of the bean salad, she could feel resolve rising up from the pit of her stomach. The teeth-tingling sweetness of the small hard pies lit up a honey-colored light in a part of her brain she didn't usually use, so that it felt ready to melt. Biting into the same kind of little pie, Reiko frowned and said with a slightly troubled expression, "Turkish sweets are so sweet, aren't they? I feel like my tongue has gone numb. So sweet. But I think I like this approach. Having just one meal a day and having it as a feast must feel so satisfying. I misunderstood fasting. I imagined it to be this painful experience where you didn't eat or drink anything for days on end. Right? Have a read of this." Reiko spread open a concertina pamphlet and Rika read aloud, "People who are permitted to abstain from fasting are those traveling, the ill, pregnant women, children, women on their period, people who find their will bending, and people who break their fast by mistake." Rika burst out laughing. Reiko nodded, as if to say, right? So, basically, anything goes. Yeah, apparently the thinking is that it's enough if the people who can do it, do. Whenever you can't, you can skip it. Apparently you can give zakat to compensate for the days that you didn't manage it. Ramadan is about creating an understanding of the feelings of the underprivileged, and the aim isn't hardship or reducing consumption. There are a lot of misunderstandings about Islam in contemporary society. This event has been created to promote understanding of religious teachings in Turkey. Wow. It's enough if the people who can do it, do. You could say that about everything, right? Which is why, Rika. Reiko leaned forward a little in her chair. Pointing to a line written in the pamphlet, she intoned, "Allah desireth for you ease. He desireth not hardship for you. Allah desireth for you ease. He desireth not hardship for you, Rika repeated. Right. If God exists, he wouldn't take joy or satisfaction in the sight of suffering. Which means you don't have to get through everything alone. You don't have to always be growing as a person either. The far more important thing is just to get through the day. Unprompted, Rika thought to herself, not for the first time, that she really liked the way Reiko looked. Reiko was made up of things that Rika herself didn't have. She was sweet and soft-looking, but she was enhanced by a dusting of pungent and bitter spices. She was like a strong-smelling, rich-flavored petit four, which no recipe in the world could teach you how to make. This week, I'm starting couples counseling with Ryosuke at the university hospital. We've given up trying to do everything by ourselves and worrying about what other couples do and what we should be doing. Ryosuke says he wants to try and create some escape routes for us so that we don't feel driven into the ground by one another. I don't know if it'll work, but one thing I do know is that I'm not embarrassed anymore about the fact that we've been having problems. I want to get help. It's going to cost money, so I might end up asking my parents. From now on, I'm going to stop thinking that asking for their support means admitting defeat, or taking advantage, or being sneaky, or any of that. My parents seem a bit bewildered by everything that's happened, but they say they want to hear what we've got to say, so I'm going to take Ryosuke to meet them for the first time. Oh, and I've decided to take up a part-time job doing accounting for the Chinese pharmacist nearby. I figure it'll be a good way for me to learn about herbology. Don't worry, I'm not going to get carried away again. I've started to think that even if it turns out I can't have kids, I'll be okay with that. Rika nodded, saying nothing, but inside she was telling Reiko what a good idea she thought that all was. You've not messed up in any way, Rika, and I don't think you've done anything as shameful as I have. Anybody would end up like you if they got involved with a woman like Kajii. I reckon every woman ends up being hurt by her, and every man ends up dying. Just look at me. With a silly gesture, Reiko flung her arms wide apart. Thank you for saying all that. In a casual tone, as if speaking about an old classmate, Reiko went on, what did we do wrong, do you think? Women like that really get under my skin, however much I try not to let them. Learning that Kajii wanted female friends comes as a kind of relief. Chizu said the same to me. Wait, are you in touch with her? Rika asked, surprised. Reiko took a sip of her cherry juice and exhaled a burst of sweet sour air. Yep. I've told her my real name, too, and about my connection with you and where I'm from. I felt like I had to do that if I wanted her to open up to me. I mimicked your way of working. Your communication skills are really something else. You're way better suited to journalism than I am. She must be so angry with me. Not really, not anymore. I've been talking to her for a while about all kinds of things. My relationship with you and various embarrassing personal things. Besides, she was worried about you. About whether what happened would have affected you physically and mentally. You know she's the secretary to a diet member in Nagatacho. That's why she looks so familiar. Rika thought back to the night they'd been to Starbucks, how she'd sat with Chizu, the two of them dressed so similarly, in the way that she'd do with a friend she'd known for years. It felt like it had happened several years ago. You did well to get in touch with her. I felt I couldn't leave things as they were. I got the sense that she wanted me to listen to what she had to say, too. In the end, I think everyone who's fixated by Kajii, everyone who's been involved with her, needs someone to talk to. Was that because Kajii, more than anybody, needed someone of the same sex to listen to her? Would you like to meet her? Shall we ask her along with us next time? Or is it too soon? In that instant, something ribbon-like went sailing across Rika's vision, and she averted her eyes. The fluttering string of letters formed a line of text from Kajii's blog, not long now until Christmas. I adore this time of the year, when the outside world is at its most captivating. Of course! How could she have forgotten something so crucial when she had read Kajii's witness report and blog so many times? On November 28th, the day before her arrest, Kajii had written a blog post detailing her plans to cook a turkey for Christmas and her intention to follow the recipe to the letter. Rika had read it over and over, particularly around the time she'd first started visiting the Tokyo detention house. That same Kajii, who had objected so vehemently to cooking the turkey at Madam's, had written those words just 2 months later. What had happened in that time to bring about such a change of heart? Was she trying to impress someone? How had she got her hands on the recipe? By the time of the post, she had left her house in Nakamaguro and was busy making meals for Yokota in his house in Kawasaki. Rika recalled the small kitchen there, which she'd glimpsed when rescuing Reiko. She couldn't believe that there'd be an oven there big enough to fit a turkey inside. Reiko, there's something I'd like you to check with Chizu. I'd like to buy this apartment. Please. The piece of paper Rika unfolded showed the layout of the 3-bedroom apartment by the park with the big oven, which Hatoko had shown her 3 months before. The two sat facing one another at a table separated from the rest of the room by partitioning screens, in the small estate agency in the narrow, multi-story building in Nishi Shinjuku. It was after lunch, and the other agents were all out of the office with clients. I'd rather you didn't make your decision in such a half-hearted way. It's a big purchase. You only saw a fraction of the buildings I'd planned to show you. I couldn't get in touch with you. The coolness of Hatoko's delivery and the condescending note to her gaze informed Rika that she had sussed who she was. There was no way that Hatoko would overlook any news on Kajii, however minor. She must at least have been on top of all the information that found its way onto the internet. It's not a half-hearted decision that I'm making. I have 2 solid reasons, both entirely selfish. The first is that I want to get a mortgage before I have to give up working in a company. Luckily, I've barely spent any money since joining the company, and my mother won't accept any financial help from me, so I have plenty saved up for the deposit. I don't want to waste any more time. The second reason is that I want something that ties me indelibly to you, so that I can maybe interview you in the future. I'm a journalist at the Shumi Weekly, although I guess you know that already. As Rika went on, it became clear that Hatoko's eyes were shielding her emotions, creating a barrier between the two of them. Not, of course, that I think that purchasing a property of 30 million yen from a capable estate agent like yourself will make you indebted to me in any way. I don't expect you to agree to the interview immediately, either. In fact, I don't mind if you ignore the idea entirely for the moment. But you know that this is a once-in-a-lifetime purchase for me, and I'm saying that I want to buy it from you. I want to block the path that leads away from being employed, and I need to do it as quickly as I can. Which is why I made my choice out of the properties you've shown me already. In an instant, Hatoko's expression grew severe. The angle of the sunlight streaming through the window made the down on her face seem as though it were standing on end. How nice it must be to be a journalist at a major media company, she said, as if sickened. Even when you've been publicly lambasted, when you've messed up people's lives just because you can, you still have a safety net. How many professions do you think there are like that in the world? How many single women do you think there are in Japan who can take out a 30-year mortgage when the urge strikes them? Don't think for a moment that you're isolated, or that you've got it hard. I don't feel the remotest bit sorry for you, even after everything that's happened. I know that I'm lucky. I guess I'm of the same generation as your brother, with similar working hours and salary, and a similar personal life. Maybe the only difference between us is that I'm a woman and he's a man. Hatoko exhaled loudly. Rika was ready to be slapped, but instead Hatoko got to her feet, went over to the water cooler and drank a glass of water. A big bubble rose up in the plastic tank and burst loudly. When she returned, all of the strength had gone from her face. Her lips were wet. She sat down roughly on the chair and said in a reckless tone, as if she no longer had any concern for Rika, "Do you get a kick out of driving people into a corner like this? There are other surviving family members of her victims, aren't there? Why choose me? Because you believe that your brother had some element of responsibility in his own death. At least, that's the sense I got, reading what you've said in the media so far and watching how you work. Your brother was drawn to an extremely domestic sort of woman. I wonder if that wasn't a source of hurt for you and your mother. I suspect that's why you're working in this field. Even after you gave up working for the architecture firm, you took up another job working with houses from a different angle. When Hatoko lifted her head, Rika could smell the sweetness of water from her. As part of the retrial, her brother's personal life was once again being exposed. His life, consisting only of his work and the trains that were his pastime, was deemed terribly sad. Increasingly, what he'd written in that cafe notebook was being seen less as an expression of his feelings towards Kajii and more as a way of letting out the stress from his work life. What does that mean, anyway, to be domestic? For a taste to be domestic, a woman to be domestic, Rika murmured. She didn't know whether or not Hitoko was listening. In today's world, when there are so many different forms the family can take, it doesn't really mean anything. Both men and women alike are being led round the houses and pressurized by a concept that doesn't even exist. I feel as though that's the very essence of this case. The water cooler let out another big gurgle. My feeling of wanting this apartment isn't half-hearted. I want it because it has a really great fitted oven. Of all the places I've seen, it's the only one with such a big one. I want to roast a turkey as soon as possible, before my determination dries up. That's the only thing that Manako Kajii couldn't make, that she didn't get to taste. Can you roast a whole turkey at home? Hitoko said, glancing at her suspiciously. Rika could tell she was trying not to make eye contact. Thanks to my time at Le Salon de Mayuko, I now have the recipe for boeuf bourguignon, the same meal Kajii cooked for your brother right before he died. I got it through a student who I know there, and I made it yesterday. Why are you telling me this? Hitoko's voice was quiet, but it still sounded as though she were screaming. She glared at Rika's nose. Like this, Rika could at last see the similarity between her and her brother's faces. Perhaps they had looked quite alike when they were younger, she thought. I heard that he thought it was beef stew, and tried to pour it over his rice. Kajii scorned him for that in the courtroom, but when I made it, I discovered the recipe is basically the same as what we call beef stew in Japan. The Western dishes commonly served in Japan are an adaptation, devised in the Meiji era as a way of making European food suitable for the Japanese palate, so there was nothing mistaken about what your brother said. So what? Well, beef stew was your mother's special dish, wasn't it? You always poured it over your rice. Hitoko said nothing, just stared down at the plan of the kitchen spread out in front of her. It's not only boeuf bourguignon either. In these last few months, I've been going through and making all the recipes Kajii made. I feel like I've come to an understanding of what it was that her victims were drawn to in her, what it was she was trying to satisfy in them, and what she herself felt. Hitoko leaned against the backrest of the chair and mumbled, "Do you really need to do all that, as a journalist? It sounds excessive to me. Seeing the way you work, I think you'd probably take a similar approach. Just from going to see 2 apartments with you, I know that you use your own time to walk around the neighborhoods where the properties are, gaining access to the sort of information that you'd only know if you were a local." After a little while, Hitoko said with a sigh, "My mother was more or less a single parent, and she was so busy working, she didn't have time for housework. To assuage her guilt about that, she spoiled my brother rotten, though she left me to my own devices. Whatever my brother wanted, she tried to give him. I told her that Kajii was bad news, but she stuck to her guns and said that if Tokyo thought she'd make a good wife, then we should give her a chance. My mother also had insecurities about not being domestic enough. The beef stew she cooked wasn't the kind you make from scratch, frying flour and butter and all that. She used the roux you bought from the supermarket. But she'd always put plenty of vegetables in, and I think she added in a bit of butter and miso. She folded her legs, unveiling her body's gentle curves. If you ask me, that's what cooking is about. That's real home cooking." With Rika's words, an awkward smile finally formed on Hitoko's face. "Why on earth did I tell you all that? I thought I'd learned my lesson. Will you let me interview you? Thanks to what happened, people now know my name and my face. Perhaps I didn't manage to see Manako Kajii for what she really was, but I can see the women who've had their honor dented by this case, because they're all like me. Would you give me a chance? I'll be very respectful of your privacy, and there'll be none of the kind of rude behavior that you experienced before. I'll do everything I can to make sure it doesn't impact on your work." Rika thought she heard a child screeching, but in fact it was the brakes of a car traveling along the Koshikaido. Hitoko stood up and, using the water from the water cooler, finally made Rika a cup of tea. I'm having a small party on the evening of August 1st to celebrate buying a place of my own, and I'm planning to roast a turkey. I'd love it if all the important people in my life would come. Please bring whatever you'd like to drink, and a dish of some kind, homemade or shop-bought. It doesn't matter. I don't have enough chairs or tables to go around, so please bring a cushion to sit on if you can. Rika. The first person to respond to Rika's text and offer up her services was you. Usually it was Reiko who was first off the mark with these things, but she seemed so busy rebuilding her life with Ryosuke that she didn't have the time to be helping out. Rika felt genuinely pleased about this development. She asked you to accompany her to the international supermarket in Azabu after work. Reiko, Ryosuke, you, Shinoi, her mother, Kitamura, Mizushima's husband who worked for an editorial agency, and their young daughter. These were the 9 people who Rika had thought of to invite. She had deliberated about whether to invite Makoto, knowing that would make it 10, but in the end decided to leave him off the list. Even if he and she were comfortable in each other's presence, she thought, the others would feel concerned. At the top of the escalator leading up from the front entrance, they were met by baskets heaped with dragon fruit and lychees, and enveloped by the cool, sweet air of the fresh food section. It was past 10 in the evening, and there were few other customers. Rika could smell oranges and meat. She had heard that the meat section here boasted the best selection in Japan, with creatures and cuts from various different cultures, and this appeared to be true, in the endless rows of glass cases. She spotted alligator meat and what looked like the fur-covered limbs of a large, unidentified beast. In the frozen food aisle, they found a case extending for meters crammed full of turkeys. Like giant rugby balls, they were shrouded in netting under their plastic packaging. They ranged in size, from that of a small watermelon to that of a sleeping baby. All of them were frozen so solid that they could easily break your toe if carelessly dropped. Rika saw no sign of the pre-marinated and seasoned type she'd been hoping to find. Left with no other choice, she investigated the unseasoned ones covered in frost, eventually selecting one weighing 5.8 kilos. She'd heard before that turkeys were inexpensive, but she still felt surprised, consulting the price label written in English, by how low the prices were. The baking tray that came with the oven in her new place was shallow, and she had a feeling that the bird's juices would spill over its side, so she also picked up a large aluminum tray made especially for roasting turkeys, before pushing her shopping trolley in the direction of the tills. Do you not need to get some ice packs to make sure it doesn't melt? No, it'll be okay without. It takes 3 whole days to defrost, so I'm sure it'll be all right in just the time it takes to get back home. Unbidden, you was throwing paper plates, cups, and plastic forks into the trolley. When Rika looked at her in puzzlement, she said, "You've only just moved, haven't you? I'm guessing you don't have enough tableware for 10 people. She hadn't been thinking about tableware at all, she now realized. You gave her an incredulous smile, then paid for all the disposable tableware herself, though Rika told her she didn't have to. Stepping out of the cool supermarket into the warm, humid air outside felt good. Even when she shared the weight with you, the turkey was heavy enough to make her lower back ache. As they were walking along the street, you suddenly yelped and then winced. In front of them was a poster for a chain of major bookshops, Manako Kajii's first autobiography, on sale August 10th. Rika recognized the photo of Kajii. It was one often used for PR, but now touched up to make her look far younger and more attractive. I've heard that the proofs are already out. I really don't think it'll sell. This husband of hers is a money-grubbing, attention-hungry moron who's running around trying to hawk it here, there, and everywhere. Everyone says how boring it actually is. Not that I'd want to read it anyway, you said at speed, suddenly furious. You know how subjective everything Kajii says is. If all that's in there is her own testimony, it'll turn out like a badly done Harlequin romance novel, I'm sure. The narcissism of claiming that it's written by a talented third party doesn't bother me all that much, but it's just so shoddy. Your article was far more real, not to mention interesting and urgent. It had been decided that, once her training was complete, you would be working in the nonfiction section. What can you do, though? I mean, Rika swallowed the end of her sentence. Has nobody else to listen to her. Even wallowing in notoriety, even with a devoted man to support her, so long as she continued to bend the truth, she would be perpetually alone. However much she shouted and screamed, it wouldn't change the fact that she was all by herself, and not a single person would accept the words she was spouting. Rika recognized that now. It made her neither disgusted nor sad. It was simply the truth. It was one way of living, and Kajii wasn't the only one to choose it. Kajii stared silently out from the poster, her eyes turned directly on Rika. They looked as if they were challenging her. What is the truth, though, really? What is a lie? There's such a small discrepancy between the two. Given that, what's so wrong about choosing whichever path seems more appealing to you? What's so wrong about coating barren, flavorless reality in oodles of melted butter and seasoning it with condiments and spices? That's my way of getting by in life, which has come about quite naturally. A kind of evolution rooted in history. Do you really believe that everything deserves to be confronted in its true form? Does this world really deserve to be inhabited as it is? Maybe Kajimana's not really a food lover at all, Rika murmured. A plume of exhaust gas from a passing truck now separated her and Kajii. You pulled a skeptical face. Rika picked up the handle of the bag and set off walking again. It wasn't as though Rika was only interested in eating exquisite cuisine that someone had toiled over making. The convenience store bento boxes and cup ramen that she shoveled down in the office late at night, the cold rice and natto she ate when she was alone at night, the meals she'd made and stored away in Tupperware containers. Not to mention all the unknown combinations she'd not eaten yet whose tastes she couldn't imagine. She felt just as much affection for all these types of food. She imagined that the future would bring its fair share of bitter feelings, humiliation, and fear, but now that she'd known all kinds of tastes and had come through the worst, that prospect didn't seem so bad. Rika looked away from Kajii towards late-night Roppongi, suffused with neon and exhaust gas. A drip of water fell from the turkey onto the pavement. Looking back at you to encourage her along, she headed for the steps leading down to the subway. When she found a seat in the carriage, she rested the heavy, cold turkey on her lap on top of a handkerchief. In the time it took for the train to reach her station, she replayed in her head the voicemail message that Reiko had left on her phone while she was still at work. I checked with Chizu, and it's as you suspected. At first she denied it, but I could tell by how shaken up she sounded that she was lying. Just like you said, all the students at the school got an invite from Kajii in November 2013. It was around the time that the news of her arrest broke, so everyone tore them up. They didn't show them to the police either, because they didn't want people thinking that they were close to Kajii. Going back to her new apartment still made Rika feel as if she were on holiday. The lukewarm air as they stepped out of the subway station felt good against her frozen knees. It was more than a 15-minute walk to hers, so they took a taxi. In the park outside her block, the cicadas were just as loud as at midday, and a group of 5 students were standing and chatting by the water fountain. She opened the door and headed to her apartment up the external staircase. When Rika turned on the lights in the apartment, you looked around with great curiosity. Rika still didn't own any furniture other than a bed, or any curtains either. The brand new wallpaper in the large, parquet-floored room shone almost blue in its whiteness, somewhat forbidding. She opened the window and pulled the mosquito nets shut, and a heavy breeze drifted in. Right away, Rika put the turkey inside the aluminium baking tray, put it on the oven rack, and pushed it into the oven. The oven gave a rusty creak when she opened and closed it, and the inside smelled faintly of baked apples. Without a flame, its inside was pitch black and she couldn't see a thing, but having established that the turkey would fit inside, her anxiety waned. Next, she opened up the new fridge. She had taken out the shelves beforehand, so the turkey fitted easily into that wide, ingredient-free space, bathed in white light. Yu's youthful forehead as she peered in behind Rika was reflected in the stainless steel handle. Wait, you didn't buy a fridge especially to fit a turkey, did you? Yep. The one I was using before was tiny, like the ones you get in hotels. Surely if you left it out of the fridge it would defrost quicker and you wouldn't need to wait 3 days. That harms the outer layer of the meat, apparently. When you was ready to head home, Rika went to the door to see her off. As she put on her shoes, Rika said to her back, "By the way, I wanted to say, don't work yourself into the ground so that you wind up quitting, okay? I don't think you will, but just in case. And I'm sorry for getting you to help out with all this extracurricular stuff." You turned around and said, as she pushed open the door, "I think you're amazing, Ms. Machida. There's loads of people on your side in the company, even if they don't say it directly. I really don't want you to quit. Not over something like this." "Thank you," Rika mumbled. The following day, when she woke up and looked at her phone, she saw a message from Shinoi. It turns out that they did find a rotten 5-kilo turkey in her fridge after her arrest, just as you said. "How did you know?" Rika didn't feel surprise. This was the meal Kajii had wanted so badly to make that she'd had to kill 5 men to do it. The meal that ended up rotting away unnoticed in her fridge. All day at work, the turkey lay in the back of her mind. Whatever she did, her thoughts were focused upon her kitchen. She guessed that Kajii had been the same. Even while she was staying at Yokota's house, Kajii had intended to return to that apartment. All that time, she'd been thinking about that turkey slowly defrosting. She hadn't ever really intended to live with Yokota. She would have a Christmas dinner at her house with her classmates from Le Salon de Mayuko. As a perfectionist with a strong desire to impress, she wouldn't be like Rika and roast it for the first time on the day itself. Rather, she'd have done several test runs beforehand. If she was welcoming Chizu into her home, then she needed to make her cry out loud with pleasure. As soon as Rika got home from the office that evening, she went over to the fridge. A whole day had passed, but the turkey was still heavy as a rock, and its surface was still only half defrosted. By the end of the second day, Rika could feel when she prodded the turkey with a tentative finger that, although its inside was still a lump of solid ice, its surface layer had regained its tender, fleshy texture. She removed the net, peeled away the wrapping paper, and saw for the first time its pinkish-white meat. The mound of the turkey's breast traced a generous curve. Its plump legs, folded together so neatly, gave her a pang of sadness. A red pin stuck into the bird's flesh was designed to indicate when it was properly cooked. All in all, it seemed just as lifelike as a section of the human body twisted into a different shape, and the feeling she had that it might well start moving and talking to her at any moment made Rika feel as though her heart were ready to break. She rubbed salt across the entirety of its body, the stubbly feeling of its skin making her hair stand on end. When she pictured herself reaching inside to pull out the head and the giblets, she felt desperate to put off the task for as long as possible. With a snap, she cut the hard, plastic thread with kitchen scissors. Peeling back the layer of skin, she saw the entrance to its dark cavity. Rika felt a profound reluctance to stick her hand inside that unfathomable darkness, which reminded her of Kajii's eyes. She stepped back and attempted to subdue her fear. The cavity didn't seem like it was the entrance to a body that small. If she'd been told it was the passageway through to another world, she'd have believed it. In less than 24 hours, her friends would arrive. When she totted up all the things she had to do between then and now, she could feel her vision clouding over. Of course, this whole occasion was happening at her own initiative, but still she felt an enormous sense of pressure. Stepping forward again and squeezing her eyes shut, Rika pushed her right hand into the cavity. With the back of her hand, she could make out a moist, open space, filled with cool air. With her palm, she could feel the bones behind the meat. A flash of anxiety that she might never see her fingers again ran through her. Her right hand might as well be floating through space, being ogled by various alien life forms. Finally, she found the long, sausage-like neck section, together with a little bag containing the liver, heart, and so on. These she pulled out, then gazed down at her own hand as if seeing it for the first time. She had to marinate the turkey. After reading numerous articles and recipes on the internet, she had decided to make a brine. She soaked celery, carrots, onion, and cloves in heavily salted water, and since she couldn't find any wine, poured in the sake she'd been given as a moving-in present. This mixture she put in a plastic bag along with the turkey. When she peered inside, the fluorescent lights from the kitchen filtered through the polythene, illuminating the bag's contents. Watching the water swirling around, she felt as though she'd acquired a small, indoor pool. She fastened the handles in a tight double knot, tied rubber bands around the opening, and then placed it in the fridge. There was no time to rest. Next, Rika boiled the turkey neck in a pan with a bouquet garni, then added in flour fried in butter to thicken it. But the gravy wasn't finished yet. Tomorrow she'd have to add in the juices from the roasted turkey. When she'd done all she could, Rika collapsed onto her bed without showering and fell asleep. She slept soundly until past midday and woke up feeling refreshed. The moment she sat up, a solemn feeling came over her. Finally, the big day had arrived. She folded up her futon and went to the kitchen, only to find that there was water seeping from the fridge. Opening the door, she discovered that, despite how assiduous she'd been in fastening the bag with the turkey in, brine had still managed to leak from it. She breathed deeply, trying not to panic, pulled a heap of kitchen paper from the roll, and got down on all floors. Having wiped the floor and thoroughly washed her hands, she took the turkey out of the bag. Its meat was now sticky and soft, and when she held it up, its shape changed, as if it were keen to slide right out of her hands and onto the floor. She blotted away the excess moisture, massaged it with salt and lemon juice, and placed it in the aluminum tray. Now it was time to tackle the stuffing, which she was making with two kinds of rice, regular short grain and sticky mochi rice. Rika washed the heart, gizzard, and liver that she'd pulled out of the turkey the previous evening and chopped them into small pieces. To this, she added beef mince, finely chopped onion, the two kinds of rice, pine nuts, bay leaves, and herbs, and fried everything together. The recipe instructed to add water and boil the rice there in the pan, but Rika feared she wouldn't be able to get it right this way, and instead transferred the mixture into a rice cooker and set it on the speediest setting. This technique was adapted from a foolproof way of making paella that Reiko had taught her. Soon enough, steam began to seep out of the vents in the rice cooker. Breathing in the smell of the umami-rich rice mixture, Rika felt the tension building. According to the food blogs and articles she'd read, stuffing a turkey brought with it the danger of food poisoning because the stuffing came into contact with the raw meat. The important thing in that regard was to make sure that the meat was cooked through, yet if you focused exclusively on that, the whole thing may end up dry. She'd read that so long as you made sure to stuff it just before cooking, not too tightly, and basted the turkey with butter as you were cooking, you would probably be fine. But Rika was very conscious of the fact that she was cooking for 9 people. Not only that, but it was midsummer and there was a small child. If anything bad happened, it would be on her. She set the oven to heat and took a packet of butter out of the fridge to bring it to room temperature. When the rice cooker played its melody to signal that its contents were ready, she spread out the golden brown pilaf, its every grain gleaming with the fat of the turkey's entrails, in a flat dish. Her lower stomach cramped a little with the enormity of the responsibility. It struck her now how easy it was for a woman tasked with feeding others to kill them. She lowered the temperature of the air conditioning. When the rice mixture had cooled sufficiently, she stuffed it loosely inside the turkey's cavity, desperately telling herself not to let it touch the inside walls, and holding one bowl's worth back to be safe. She unwound some twine and trussed the bird's legs together. With the help of 4 toothpicks, she used the turkey's skin to cover over the entrance to the cavity. Next, she smeared the now softened butter across the turkey with her hands. The way that the white butter went melting into the skin with the heat of her fingers reminded her of that time she'd given Makoto a massage. It was amazing how easily it melted in. She put the slippery turkey speckled with protuberances like tiny grains into the aluminum tray, placed the tray on the baking sheet, and opened the oven. Lit up by blue flames, the oven made Rika think of the ring of fire in the circus. If she could pass through, she thought, she would be treated to feverish applause. Her cheeks felt hot. Finally, Rika put the turkey in the oven, closed the door, and let out a big sigh of relief. She had 3 hours. She washed her hands and sighed once more. She had to ensure that great hunk of meat was cooked all the way through, opening the oven from time to time to baste it with melted butter. If it wasn't cooked well enough, someone might get sick. Alternatively, it might turn out dry and flaky, and she would feel terrible about that too. To avert the latter eventuality, she had to be very careful and thorough with her basting. She tasted the leftover stuffing. The mochi rice imbued with the sticky, rich taste of liver was heavenly to eat just as it was. She melted some butter in a pan, did some washing up, and cleaned around the fridge with an alcohol spray. Her phone timer went off, alerting her that an hour had passed. Putting on her oven gloves, Rika cautiously opened up the oven. The whole bird was now a light brown shade, and its skin had grown tight. It was still far from being roasted, but the juice-laden mass sizzling in front of her had already ceased to be a lump of raw meat ridden with causes for concern. Rika felt herself immediately calmer. She took out a cake decorating brush and slowly painted melted butter over the turkey's surface. The butter was absorbed greedily by the hot meat, vanishing at an astounding speed. Not long after she'd put the turkey back in the oven, the intercom rang for the first time that day. She pressed the button to let her guest in and washed her hands. It was Reiko and Ryosuke, along with her mother and Kitamura, who they'd bumped into downstairs. A smile rose up on her face, totally naturally. "Wow, this place is so big! Congratulations on your new home. Wait, you don't have a table. I can't believe you'd think to invite this many people without one," Kitamura said, apparently unfazed by the presence of Rika's mother. Her guests arranged the cushions that they'd brought on the floor, while Kitamura spread a rug from a Scandinavian brand designed for outdoor use. Immediately, the floor of the living room was transformed into a giant, comfortable sofa. Rika set out the low folding table she'd used at her previous apartment in the middle, and it instantly became somewhere suitable for a crowd of people to eat a meal. "It's a nomad's dinner party," her mother said with a laugh, sitting down with her legs out to one side. Rika felt reassured to see her making conversation with Kitamura and Ryosuke, both of whom she was meeting for the first time. Reiko arranged the mashed potato and savory homemade hot biscuits she'd brought on paper plates. Then Mrs. Shima and her husband arrived with their 5-year-old daughter, Miki. "What's that yummy smell?" Miki cried out when she stepped in. Outside the window, a summer sunset was spreading out across the sky. Inside, a smell of hot butter and cooked meat, with a far greater depth to it than any chicken, was making its way throughout the room. With cups of wine and juice in hand, the guests picked at the cheese and snacks that people had brought. You arrived with a watermelon. The party began of its own accord, irrespective of Rika still stationed beside the oven. Like a doctor's assistant, Reiko brought over drinks and bite-sized sandwiches for her to eat. The second time she opened the oven, Rika knew in her heart that it was going to be a success. She bent over as she basted the turkey once again, so that nobody could see inside. Shinoi, the last of her guests to arrive, showed up 15 minutes before the turkey was done. Over the intercom he said, "I've brought someone with me. Is that okay? I'm sorry it's so last minute." When I told her where I was going, she said she wanted to come. That's totally fine. The recipe's for 10, so it's perfect, in fact. When Rika opened the door, she saw a long-limbed, pale-skinned young girl, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt. "Hi, I'm Saya Kamiyama." Her short haircut revealed ears studded with small earrings of an intricate design. Rika struggled to reconcile the stories of the young girl she'd heard about from Shinoi together with the very ordinary-looking student standing in front of her, and turned to Shinoi as if for help. He looked both abashed and embarrassed, and seemed to be having difficulties getting words out. Without looking at her father, Saya went on, "My dad told me about your party. I've always wanted to try roast turkey. I'm studying nutrition at university. I'm in my 3rd year, so I thought I might be able to help you out in some way." So Rika thought she was putting her past experience to good use. She knew she shouldn't stare, but she couldn't help herself from wondering about the state of the girl's health. She didn't seem overly skinny, but nor was she chubby. She looked, in fact, a regular sort of weight. Her wide, slightly downturned eyes had a sad cast about them, but she had an attractive face with black, willful-looking eyebrows. She wasn't noticeably similar to Shinoi, so Rika supposed she must take after her mother. The last time she'd spoken to Shinoi about his relationship with his daughter, it had sounded to her as though it was probably beyond repair, and yet here they were. I'm sorry for tagging along out of the blue, though. Thanks for agreeing to have me. I'm Rika Machida. Your father has been very good to me. I guess if you're studying nutrition, you must be a good cook? I'm still very much a beginner, so I'd love to learn more from you. While the two of them were talking, Shinoi and Ryosuke introduced themselves, exchanging business cards and bowing. It's great to meet you. I understand that Reiko was staying at your place for a while. I'm really sorry for all the disturbance that must have caused. Rika was surprised to overhear this snippet of conversation, meaning as it did that Reiko must have told Ryosuke where she'd been while she was away from home. She found it hard to imagine what their time together as a couple must have been like since her return. Not at all, it's I who should be thanking you. Reiko kept the apartment in good order. As a result, it looks like it's going to sell for a high price. Seeing Reiko and Ryosuke standing there in front of Shinoi, Rika finally understood. Reiko had been liberated in some way. She'd started laughing and eating more, and led by her Ryosuke had also regained his generosity. It was clear that Shinoi had played a big role in her transformation. He himself had started seeing his daughter. The idea that now floated into Rika's mind, was it just frivolous speculation? But even if it were true, who on earth would blame Reiko for it? The timer on her phone went off, and Rika ran into the kitchen. She took a deep breath and, with both oven gloves on, flung open the oven door. The turkey that appeared before her was a burnished golden shade, sizzling in its juices. This was it, the physical embodiment of the image she'd been painting in her head for so long. It seemed like the symbol of ultimate victory. She would remember this time and time again in the future, she thought, whenever she felt discouraged. The red pin had risen up out of the turkey flesh. Her eyes stung from the heat of the oven. Rika yelled from the bottom of her stomach, "The turkey's done." Reiko, will you help me add the juices into the gravy? She picked up the foil tray whose contents were as heavy as a baby and carried it over into the center of the room where everyone stood. A great cheer went up, which she knew instinctively to be one of genuine admiration. Everyone's eyes were sparkling. A few people held up their phones towards the turkey. Amazing! How are we going to carve it, though? Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, Rika said in response to Reiko's question. With her hands out of action, she shook her head, then set the turkey down on the table. Her lower arms were cramping with the weight of it. I found a video of Martha Stewart cutting a Thanksgiving turkey. This might do it, Saya said, showing you her phone. The two were close in age, and they seemed to be getting on well. Saya didn't appear a particularly talkative type, but when the topic at hand was food, she grew more proactive in making conversation. Watching the screen of her phone, Saya worked efficiently. She unwound the twine, now coated in juice. The bird's legs came off first, then the upper part of the breast. Her movements with the knife were clean and efficient. As the inside of the turkey began to show from beneath its crisp brown skin, steam rose up. Rika was surprised to find the flesh was more densely packed than she had thought. Her mother let out a sigh. Its cross-section looked like a joint of smooth pink ham. A pile of different kinds of cuts formed on the plate alongside the turkey, and its hazel-colored bones were removed. Rika now understood how the turkey's bones were arranged in its body. The cavity that had seemed endless to her when she'd put her hand inside it appeared very small. The part filled with stuffing occupied less than a fifth of the bird's overall volume. The rich sweetness of the butter and the delicious aroma of the meat had expanded to fill the entire room. Martha Stewart is the one who went to jail for insider trading, right? But made jam and generally quite enjoyed her life as a prisoner, Kitamura said. Mrs. Shima immediately responded, "Oh my God, she's the American Kajimana." People were having fun, not worrying about Rika. Even Sada was smiling a little. When she smiled, her jaw grew round and her cheeks stuck out, so that her face appeared far younger, like that of a child. As the adults were peering with fascination at the video, making various comments, she went on carving the turkey. Rika remembered something that Madam had said once during a lesson. Japanese people have a bad habit of trying too hard when entertaining. We try to do everything perfectly all by ourselves, and that's why the habit of inviting people round and enjoying it in a relaxed way hasn't caught on in this country. She had a feeling that her life from now on was going to be a lot easier. She felt the tension that had accumulated from the move and the long hours cooking now draining from her body. The plate with the carved meat and paper cups of wine and juice were passed around. Kitamura stood up. I think before we say cheers, we should have a little speech from the person who's put this all together. All eyes turned to Rika. A cup of wine in her hand, still mentally sorting through the things that had happened and the decisions she'd made these last few days, she opened her mouth. From next month, I'm going to be writing a feature for the company's women's magazine. It's going to be about what happened to me, featuring interviews with other women whose lives were thrown into disarray by Kajii. I've got permission to speak with one of the victim's relatives, with Kajii's mother and sister, with the person running the cooking school she attended, and with a few of its students too. After much pestering, the chief editor has finally agreed for me to do it, on the condition that it isn't published in the Shumi Weekly. I'm not going to leave the company. For better or worse, I'm famous now, and I think I'm going to make use of that fame as best as I can to get by. At the moment, my role at the weekly magazine is mostly limited to administrative tasks. I don't expect they'll let me return to public-facing stuff for a while, but I want to stay there, figuring out how best to go about it as I go along. I've got a mortgage now, so there's no turning back. I know it's not the most convenient place to get to, but I've got plenty of rooms, so I'd like you to use it and stay over if you ever need to, like a dorm, as you did with Mr. Shinoi's place. I don't have any furniture yet, but I do have 3 futons for guests. I guess what I really want to say is, I'm really grateful to you for all your support. The room fell quiet. It was Reiko who broke the silence. I'd love you to interview me as well, she said, straight-faced. You wouldn't have to use my name or reveal my identity, right? Of course not. Let me think about it. Everyone said cheers, and then fell upon the meat as if their patience could hold out no longer. This is the first time I've ever eaten turkey. It's so good. I can't believe it, Kitamura said, a level of excitement in his voice that made him sound like a totally different person to normal. He wasn't the only one either. Everyone had a compliment for the meal. It's different from both chicken and duck. It's flavorful and tender. Lots of umami. The skin is crispy like Peking duck, but the flesh is so moist and creamy. I've never eaten anything like this before. The stuffing in the middle is out of this world. Did you make it all from scratch? I'd love the recipe. Will you give it to me later? Rika was the last to pick up her fork and tuck into the meat. The first thing she experienced was simple relief that the pink flesh was sufficiently cooked. It had a unique fragrance to it, which made her think of walking along a path with fallen leaves crunching underfoot, and its clear juice filled her mouth. The stuffing of mochi rice, mince and pine nuts, now swollen with all the turkey juice and butter it had soaked up, had a sticky texture and a concentrated richness of flavor totally different to before it had been stuffed, which made Rika feel that she wanted to carry on eating it forever. It's like we're having a feast, Mickey said, smiling, her face streaked with gravy. All right, you don't need to advertise how half-hearted Mum's cooking is in comparison, Mrs. Shima said, wiping her daughter's face with a napkin, and everyone laughed. It's a feast because it only happens once in a blue moon, Rika said. The gravy that Reiko had put the finishing touches to was passed around the guests. Rich with the juices of the turkey, its taste seemed to contain the umami from all the parts of the bird. When soaked up with the hot biscuits Reiko had made, the combination of the crumbly pastry and the juice was unbelievably good. Both vanished in no time. Rika said quietly to Reiko, who had come to sit next to her, "It's a funny thing, sharing recipes. I got this one from Madam, who got it from a university friend who now lives in the States. It was a recipe that was the start of everything with Kajii as well. And the recipes she's taught me are almost all other people's." Reiko lowered her voice and asked, "How did Kajii get her hands on this recipe, though?" "My guess is that Madam gave it to her. Even when she hadn't been back to the class after causing that huge spectacle?" In order to have officially quit, she'd have had to be in touch with Madam, no? I had to email her to unenroll us. It was so awkward. Why had Madam given Rika her recipe book so readily? When Rika thought the matter through, she felt as though she could begin to understand Madam's feelings a bit better. The more times you followed a recipe, the more it became a part of your own body. That was particularly true of a professional like Madam. Which is why the recipes in that notebook were no longer really for her. They were a public item. They existed to be shown to the women who came to learn to cook with her. Even if the school only admitted people through personal introductions, it stood to reason that when you opened up your doors, you would get outsiders like Kajii and Rika joining. Madam had no hesitation in passing on her recipes, not just to her beloved disciples who worshipped her, but to women she would not see again, and had no wish to either. Perhaps she felt some kind of satisfaction in the idea of the recipes she'd passed on spreading throughout the world. It wasn't a desire for fame or exposure, but a more personal kind of enjoyment and sense of openness. Kajii, too, must have understood that pleasure for her to have given all her recipes and culinary experiences to Rika. Before too long, there was only a bit of the turkey left. Looking at the variously shaped purple-tinged bones heaped up on the foil tray, Rika thought over the last 4 days, and a question came to her. Where had the tiger's bones ended up? The tigers in Little Babaji had spun round and round until they turned into butter, but there hadn't been any bones scattered beneath the tree. Had the bones melted into the butter as well? But no. If the bones hadn't been found, then it was impossible to say whether or not the tigers were really dead. Maybe they were living on in the jungle to this day? The same went, too, for Kajii's victims. Nobody really knew whether or not they'd had their hearts stolen by her. Rika had never once seen any proof that Kajii had been adored by anyone, the kind of visible proof that was in front of her now, in the way Shinoi looked at Saya and Reiko served Ryosuke his meat. There was nothing left beyond her own version of events. People were stretching out now on the rug, allowing their distended stomachs to hang out. With flushed cheeks, which led Rika to think she might be a bit tipsy for once, her mother said, "There's nothing like this kind of post-meal satisfaction. But it's not so heavy it gives you indigestion either." It was so good. Apparently in the West, they use turkey to make meals the day after Thanksgiving as well. You can mash up the turkey with potato, put cheese on and fry it, or make turkey sandwiches. You see it in Hollywood films and overseas novels as well, Reiko said. Rika now envisaged the smells and the looks of those meals. She wanted to try them one day, for sure, but they didn't feel quite right on this occasion. What she wanted to eat next was something completely different. She put a hand to her stomach and tried to listen calmly to her own desires, to what her body wanted. Today's meal was really stodgy, so I feel like it'd be nice to do something light, with Japanese flavoring. Dashi and soy sauce or something. Cooking turkey in a Japanese style. Is that possible? Reiko said incredulously. If I feel like doing it, then of course it is. The words came out of her mouth naturally. It was only once they were out that she realized how absurdly confident they sounded. Looking round at people's surprised faces, she felt a flush of embarrassment. In a loud voice, she announced, "If anybody wants to eat a meal made from the turkey leftovers tomorrow, you're welcome to stay over. It won't be anything orthodox. I'm going to do my own Japanese take." Her mother's eyes lit up as she said immediately, "I'll stay." Rika guessed that for her mother, who was so burdened by caring for her grandfather, staying away from home was a real treat. Shinoi, who seemed tipsy, said in a far softer tone of voice than usual, "I'd like to as well. Although I guess I should hold back, should I? If it's going to be all women. Dad, do you have to be so insensitive? Please." Saya cut in, and the atmosphere grew icy for a moment. Shinoi looked so crestfallen that Rika couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Then Saya went on, "I'll stay. This place is close to my university, and I've got club activities tomorrow. But there's 3 rooms, yes? I'll sleep in the room next to my dad. That'll solve the problem, right? Would you mind lending me something to sleep in?" There was something so clipped and decisive about her way of speaking that everyone looked surprised. "Are you sure that's okay? You're not doing anything you don't want to. Shinoi looked bewildered, and his eyes had grown red, but Saya ignored him entirely and began clearing up the paper plates. Maybe, Rika thought, if her father was alive and was here, she would do something similar. Maybe she would also have been able to find her way towards a third path, where neither she nor her father were acting purely out of obligation, and yet neither of them felt rejected. It's fine, I'm not. I'd like to eat turkey for breakfast. Her mother, Shinoi, and Saya, it was a combination that until very recently would have been unimaginable, yet now, the thought of those three sleeping together under this roof seemed to make sense. Was it because the apartment was spacious, or because they'd all shared the turkey? Everyone carried on talking, with little concern for what was going on around them. Only Shinoi stayed silent, gazing at his daughter's profile. One by one, the guests started to leave, with Reiko and Ryosuke the last to go. When Rika went back into the living room, after watching from the balcony as the pair vanished into the darkness, she and the three remaining guests set about clearing up. The cups and plates could be thrown away, so it didn't take long. All the food other than the turkey had been polished off. By the time they'd taken turns to wash, it was past 1 in the morning. Rika laid out the futons in the 3 rooms and handed people night clothes, then they all said good night to one another. Shinoi wore tracksuit bottoms and a shirt that Makoto had once worn, his face flushed red from the bath. Rika finally was able to lie down on the camp bed in the living room. She knew that nights like these when she was surrounded by friends and didn't have to feel alone were a rare miracle. How many years would it be before there'd be another occasion like this? The knowledge of its rarity made it feel even more precious to her. She was reading her book when her mother came into the room wearing Rika's clothes, her skin gleaming. "Do you need something?" No. Today was the most fun I've had in a while. The people in your life are all so strange and interesting." Saying this, her mother looked around the room with nothing in it and said hesitantly, "I was quite worried about you, with everything that was going on at work." "I'm relieved to see you're looking well." Rika moved the ribbon in her book to mark her page, then sat up. Sitting with her mother like this, it felt just like when they'd first started living alone, when her mother was in her 40s. Rika had no confidence that she would be as cheerful as her mother had always been if she herself had a school-age daughter. "I've been so tied up in my own stuff that I haven't been helping you at all. I always feel bad about that. If it ever gets too much, you can always come here, you know? I chose this place so that you could live with me one day." "Thank you. I think I've still got a bit of fight left in me before that. If I feel I can't manage it anymore, I'll tell you. I'd much rather you were doing what you wanted to and looking after yourself than holding back and helping me. That's the best you can do for me as a daughter. I'm going to take care of myself physically and make sure I enjoy my life. That was what I got divorced for. It wasn't to make things harder for myself, but to make them more enjoyable." Saying this, her mother left the room, looking a little embarrassed. Rika turned out the lights. Gazing into the darkness, Rika thought about the meal she was going to cook the following day. She remembered that she had noodles that she'd meant to eat after she'd moved in. As was traditional, they were still sitting under the sink. "Turkey Siro," she murmured into the darkness. Since her father had lost his temper so badly on New Year's Eve, she disliked kamo siro, that traditional New Year food, yet now she felt a burst of longing for the cold soba noodles dipped into warm aromatic sauce. The turkey had absorbed lots of butter, which went well with soy sauce. There was nothing so far-fetched about mixing turkey with Japanese flavors. She would simmer the turkey bones and add dashi, seasoning the broth with soy sauce and mirin. Then she'd boil the soba noodles, chill them in cold water and drain them. She'd put the last remaining pieces of turkey meat into the hot dipping sauce along with yuzu rind. Ideally, she'd have used water celery, but she would make do with the crust she'd bought for the salad, and finish it off with some wasabi and chopped scallions. Why had Kajii wanted to roast a turkey? Rika felt sure that it was to make amends with the women in the cooking class. Fortunately, she'd been arrested before she discovered that Chizu and the others had ripped up her invitations. Quite possibly, she was still thinking about the students and about Rika too. What position do I occupy inside her consciousness? Rika wondered, as the woman she hurt so thoroughly, the woman she let in and then succeeded in ruining. But then, she asked herself, was I ruined? In the end, it was probably correct to say that Kajii hadn't even succeeded in doing that. You can't even be properly ruined. Kajii had once bellowed at her maliciously. The people who had wished not only for Kajii's ruin but Rika's as well must have been trembling in dissatisfaction and despair. And yet, however much scorn Kajii might pour on her way of life, which consisted in proceeding clumsily forward, stopping and starting, changing course as she went, Rika no longer had any intention of altering it. Now that she was able to produce with her own two hands what she felt to be lacking, she sensed that tomorrow and the day after would, if anything, be better than today. She knew that she was brazen. Her journalistic career had been all but ripped apart at the seams, and yet she hadn't given up writing. She had clung on at the company, used her connections to cobble together a new project, taken out a mortgage, and now here she was thinking about what she was going to eat tomorrow. Maybe in the eyes of the world she was an impudent eccentric, just like Kajii. Seeing herself from the outside for a split second, Rika smiled. Noodles with a turkey and soy dipping sauce was the first recipe that Rika had come up with by herself and for herself, based on her tastes, desires, and physical condition. She wanted to invent many more original recipes in the future and tell someone about the best ones. It didn't matter if that someone was a person she liked or disliked, or someone she'd never even met. If someone else could experience the journey she'd been on, and the joy she'd felt in coming up with the dish, just the thought of that prospect made Rika's chest fizz in excitement. She wanted for these nameless recipes she'd invented to go rippling out into the world, changing color and shape as they went, just like the drop of a hidden ingredient which you added to the soup at the very end. Rika wanted to go on living with a sense of that chain reaction stored inside her. She wanted to see Kajii again too. She wanted to meet her and tell her that this world deserved to be lived in. Or no, that this world deserved to be tasted greedily. Rika's body sank comfortably into the bed with a brand new sense of satisfaction. She'd done it. She'd taken great care with her cooking and hadn't made anyone sick. Her labor over the past 4 days had been rewarded. She pulled her blanket up to her nose, sensing the presence of the father and daughter whose relationship was slowly being rebuilt a couple of walls away. They'd eaten everything, and all that remained were bones. Rika closed her eyes and pictured the shapely hazel-colored carcass in the fridge. As she was thinking through the steps she'd taken cooking it the following morning, she fell into a deep, delicious sleep.